Welcome to Centennial Oral Histories, a series featuring former and current leaders of Duke University and Duke Health, sharing memories of their time at Duke and their hopes for Duke's future. Enjoy this discussion with Grant Hill, a celebrated Duke alumnus, basketball legend, philanthropist, and current member of the Duke Board of Trustees. He has made a lasting impact on the university through his athletic achievements, leadership, and dedicated support of the Duke community. He is interviewed by Ann Pelham, a Duke alumna and member of the Board of Trustees.
My name is Ann Pelham, and I'm here today with Grant Hill for a conversation to mark Duke's Centennial celebration. Grant, you've been a Duke leader, a basketball star, a broadcaster, an art collector, and a successful businessman, and a husband and father, and you've got more time to go to do more things. You've managed to create quite a life since you left Duke back in 1994. So what we are going to lean into more today than some of those main elements of your life is the Duke part.
Okay.
So let's go back and start where you got to Duke, how you got here. You were growing up in Reston as an only child of two wonderful parents, and they were really thrilled when you decided to come to Duke. Is that right?
Yes, kind of, yes. My parents were, first of all, I'm an only child of two only children, so that explains a lot. But no, I obviously fell in love with basketball, and that was how I was first introduced to Duke University. And as I was falling in love with basketball, college basketball was blossoming, particularly with the advent of cable television, and there were a couple of local hometown guys, Northern Virginia, the DMV area, who came and were part of Coach K's early success. Johnny Dawkins, who graduated in 86, and then Tommy Amaker, who literally grew up the next town over from me, and he graduated in 87. So watching some hometown guys go to Duke and sort of put Duke basketball on the map was first how Duke, I guess, got on my radar, if you will. And then I started to show promise and start to be recruited by pretty much most of the schools out there. And it was really Coach K. Coach K, before he was this iconic figure in the world of sports, he was an up and coming, just hard-nosed, honest man of integrity. All these things that you saw something there, you wanted to be a part of it, and so that's how it all kind of happened, and that's how I was introduced and have had this lifelong relationship with university. But I will say, as much as my parents grew to love Duke, I don't know if they were thrilled with the decision at the time, in part because my mother was a huge Georgetown fan,
right,
and I think loved the idea of me going to school and playing basketball literally in her backyard. She would check on me probably every day, which might not have been a good thing. And then, believe it or not, my dad was a huge North Carolina fan, UNC fan. And so, but I think through that decision, which I'm still amazed that I made such an important decision, a significant decision, a decision that continues to just pay off and continue to enrich and continue to just play an important role in my life. To make that decision, like I just turned 16,
right,
and so something about Coach K, something about the university, something about the community here was endearing, and so I'm proud of my 16-year-old self.
Yes.
for having the wisdom to make that decision. But Janet Hill and Calvin Hill at first were not super enthusiastic about that decision at that time.
Well, as you said, they became enthusiastic over the years, and your mother was such a proud Duke supporter for so many years. She became a trustee of the university, and that's a role that you hold now. So the Hill family has been a Duke family for many years. So we appreciate that. We appreciate your support and all that you've done. But I'd like to hear a little bit more about what it was like to be a student at Duke back in the early 90s. Certainly, it was very different than the situation some basketball players find today when they're on campus for a year. Many are still here for 4 years. But you had a chance to be a student. You've talked about some of the courses you took. How was it to be a student athlete at Duke in the early 90s?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. It was, I think, very different for the basketball student athletes back then, as you mentioned, compared to present day. And, obviously, basketball was a big deal in the early 90s. And when I arrived on campus in the fall of 1990, and people were very much aware of who you are and sort of your bio, your stats, and the anticipation of the upcoming season. But I thought that excitement was really balanced with just a level of normalcy. And, you were able to really be a part of the community. And whether that was, as a student and, in class and study sessions and study groups, the social aspect. It really, for me, the basketball part, I think obviously everyone or a lot of people are aware of, and certainly we were a part of some great times, but the people, the community, the student body, it was, I learned so much from my peers, and I have, lifelong friends as a result of many of those experiences. But there was just, I don't know, I felt like you kind of stood out because, one, you're tall, and two, because of the association with the basketball team. But you were just another part of the community. And the school and the size of the school, I felt like the intimacy of the school, you felt like you knew everyone, and you felt like you had a chance to really interact with some incredible people that, as a 17-year-old who arrived on campus, was just in awe of the kind of people that I had a chance to be around, to live with, to learn with, to socialize with. I'm glad I experienced Duke as a student athlete in the early 90s and not in present day. Nothing against present day, but I would have missed out possibly on those 4 years of just some valuable life lessons and experiences.
You mentioned you wrote a book recently, published in 2022, Game, an autobiography. And in it, you talked a little bit about a couple of classes. One was anatomy. I was impressed that you took a class in anatomy because your major wasn't in that area, right?
No, it was not. It was not at all. And, I took the class. It was a class, Frank Bassett, who is no longer with us, but was a prominent figure in the Duke medical system, was really one of the pioneers in sports medicine, and was also the basketball and football team doctor. And so he had this anatomy of the lower extremities course. And so he encouraged me and some of my teammates to take the class. And I was also dating someone who was a kind of a pre-med student. So those two influences at the time led me into the class. And it was one of the most fascinating courses and experiences I had, to be able to learn more about the body, to have cadavers in the class and go through the process of exploring the different muscles and the nerve endings. And, little did I know, one, that a lot of that would come in handy later in life with the various injuries and setbacks that I had throughout my career. But it was just fascinating. And I think at the time, it just was an example of the many offerings that were here at Duke, and the educational experience, the world-class education a chance to learn from, one of the best, like I said, a pioneer in the world of sports medicine. And a funny story, so where I took the class during my second semester, sophomore year, and that was the spring of '92. And of course, that was a magical time. It was our back-to-back NCAA championship season. And we're at the Final Four in Minneapolis, and we just played Indiana. And during the game, I banged my knee. I had a collision and I fell, and my knee kind of hit the floor of the hardwood. And after the game, Dr. Bassett was examining my knee. And he's poking around, and I said, "Doc, I think it's my medial epicondyle." And now I'm not sure it really was, but he was so excited that I was able to like I'm paying attention in class, and I remember that moment. And we years later would joke about that. And but yeah, I mean that those friendships, that class was incredible. The only bad part was the smell, the
Formaldehyde?
Formaldehyde, yeah, that was, I never quite got used to it during the semester. But yeah, just I mean, not many student athletes who are, or who aren't pre-med majors have that kind of exposure to that kind of class. And although I didn't pursue a career in medicine, just to have a real respect and a healthy understanding of how the body works was really, really fascinating.
Well, you managed to major in history and political science, so it is a long way from anatomy. You broke new ground there. And I'll just go ahead and mention another class, and that was public speaking that you took, that you mentioned in your autobiography. Why did you decide to do that, and did that make any difference later on?
I'm impressed, Ann. You really did read the book.
Well, I was motivated. We're having a conversation here.
No, so it's interesting. I used to have a slight stutter and was very uncomfortable with the idea of public speaking. And in interviews, the very few that I was fortunate to do while in high school as a result of my success on the basketball court, I struggled mightily, and I lacked the confidence. I talked too fast, and my freshman year, I can't remember what semester, but I ended up taking a public speaking course, and learned a lot of tools, a lot of sort of had opportunities to practice in front of the class. I was the type of student in high school where if the teacher asked a question to the class and I knew the answer, I was so hesitant to raise my hand, not because I was fearful of being wrong, but just because I was uncomfortable with the idea of speaking in front of a group. And so anyway, yeah, that class, I don't know if I was fully aware of how important that class would be and how it helped me gain the confidence and the necessary tools to be successful when speaking in front of groups or speaking in front of the media or speaking in front of Ann Pelham. But that really helped me. And look, the notoriety, the spotlight of Duke basketball at that time, it certainly came in handy. And now, I do a number of public speaking events, speaking to corporations, speaking amongst a group of employees, a team, in my role as managing director at USA Basketball. Right. And so I always kind of go back to that freshman year. I think it was second semester freshman year when I took that course as an elective, and really gave me the confidence that I can do this. And I've been, as some would say, I've been talking ever since.
Well, and enjoying it, I think. And you're a broadcaster as well. And that's a situation where you have to think on your feet for sure. If you're calling a basketball game or trying to offer commentary.
Who would have thought? I mean, you know, the young man who, essentially a teenager who arrived here in the fall of '90, to think that, you know, I would, you know, broadcast basketball games. I mean, that was, you know, I never would have thought that. And so, and it's interesting, just the idea, the ability to communicate, the ability to connect with people, like that's so important in life. Whether you're a public speaker or you're working in television, media, whatever the case may be, to be able to communicate effectively is really a large part of any success in any, you know, in any industry. And so, so yeah, I mean, I remember my sophomore year, I was in my apartment on Central Campus, and my parents were back in Northern Virginia at home, and we were doing a sports radio interview with a local sports radio station in the Washington, D.C. area. And, you know, it was during the school year, and my parents were on the interview as well. And so they're at home on the phone, and I'm in my Central Campus apartment on the phone, and I'm answering questions. And after the, you know, and I did most of the you know, most of the questions were directed towards me. And when the interview concluded, like, my parents called me, and, you know, I'm thinking, okay, I might have split a verb, or what did I say wrong? And they were just in awe of how, like, I conducted myself, and how composed I was, and I was thoughtful, and all these things, and so I think, you know, in a very short period of time, they saw that growth and that confidence, and so, you know, maybe it naturally would have happened, but I do think, you know, that class was a pivotal moment for me during my early years here at Duke.
Well, it didn't hurt either for your parents to take note and give you some positive feedback too. I'm glad that they were that smart, and I know they meant every word of it. But you had great parents, and they I think they also helped you have the confidence to do things like, well, when you were after Duke and you were making your way into the marketplace, you didn't have an agent. You hired a lawyer, and you made a lot of decisions yourself. Do you think that made a big difference in the way that you managed the off-court aspect of your career?
Yeah, that's a great point. I've, you know, since I graduated from Duke, I've been able to do a lot of really cool things, and I think in part the decision, you know, when I left and entered the NBA, you know, I went through the process early to find representation, and sort of the traditional model was, you know, you hire an agent and you pay that agent a percentage, you know, and there was a certain amount, a maximum amount that they could charge for your NBA contract, and then, you know, there was no limit to what they could charge for your various marketing opportunities and deals as such. And so I think part of just being exposed to my, you know, my peers in school, and hearing about their dreams and their aspirations and what they wanted to accomplish, you know, there was an ambition that was here. Like, students were go-getters. You know, students wanted to get out and make a difference and wanted to do something of substance. And we all sort of defined success differently, but you're in that environment, and you're interacting with you know, people of your own age and with, you know, who have that kind of energy and spirit about them. It rubs off. And so I think in a lot of ways I was inspired, you know, by my peers. And okay, so what makes the most sense here? And, you know, I played at Duke, 125 nationally televised games. I'm going into the NBA. The NBA is a global media and public relations firm. You know, why do I need to pay an agent 20% of my earnings? And why not, we're essentially business people, why not hire an attorney? And I mean, it made a lot of sense, and so that was the route I took. And I mean, obviously my parents' influence was certainly important, but I just think the environment at the school and being around just incredibly intelligent people. So what would this person do, or what would that? Those were things that were going through my mind. In April of '94 when I was going through that process.
You were still very young at that point. You weren't 17 anymore, but you were still you were 21. But I think you had the confidence to question the status quo. Long before Taylor Swift re-recorded all of her albums, you were standing on your own. You were trusting your own judgment,
Right.
and I think that. I think you've continued to do that, to your credit. Let's talk a little bit about Coach K before we leave those college years. I think he was an influence on so many of his players. How are there a couple of things that stand out for you from your exposure to him as a coach, and a hard-driving coach at times, and other times maybe a fatherly figure of some sort? What are a couple of them?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to unpack with Coach K. I'll say that I was fortunate to receive experience and receive a world-class education here at Duke. Some incredible faculty, classes, some of which we we talked about, and I also mentioned I learned from my classmates and the social interactions, the study groups, all of that. But there was so much that I learned and that has stuck with me from Coach K, and I call it the classroom of K. I think for him, at least how I interpreted those 4 years, and really just his success over the course of his 40 plus years coaching at Duke, it's really about teaching values. And, those values and getting everyone to buy in to collective responsibility and teamwork and love and like all these things that he emphasized and preached, and would use real life examples or use examples in basketball to teach these lessons. The winning was really just a byproduct of that. And so, I mean, yeah, you had talent and obviously there's pressure to win and all of that, but these values were instrumental and were sort of the ingredients for this success. And so in everything I do, whether it's sports related, it's business, it's leadership, it's being a parent, being like, I feel like I'm harping on and I'm sort of reflecting on so much of what he gave us. And the winning, the banners, the 𝐃𝐮𝐤𝐲𝐞 and all the excitement that comes with it, it's incredible. But those moments in film session, those moments, on the court during practice, those teachable moments, those are the things that were incredible. And what I loved about Coach was he was a relationship coach. He took the time, which is a great lesson as a leader, but he took the time to understand his players and understand who they are and how best to connect with them and to get the most out of them. And so I played with some incredible teammates and who had varying personalities, Christian Laettner, Bobby Hurley, myself, all very different people. And he figured out how to how to resonate with each one of us. And so, his beauty, his genius, it's not, he'll get mad at me for saying this, but it's not necessarily in the X's and O's and in the strategy, but it's connecting with people and pulling something out of them, pulling greatness out of them, and also at times holding them accountable.
He was never a one-size-fits-all kind of guy.
Not at all, not at all. And And I think as you look at the totality of his career and his accomplishments, I mean, just the fact that you can inspire and teach and resonate with young men in 1980, and then still have that same level of impact with young men in 2019 or 2020, that's hard to do, multiple generations. And so the adapting, the adjusting, the ability to, recognize the landscape and not change who you are, but adapt in terms of how to connect with those. I have a hard time connecting with my own children. And so, but there's a generation gap, and he mastered that. And, I've always said that he was a magnificent leader who just so happened to coach basketball. And if he had chosen any other field or any other industry, I truly believe that he would have had success. And thankfully, he chose basketball.
And you came along at just the right time.
Right, right.
So I can't help but ask you about that famous moment in the regional final against Kentucky when you threw that. Well, if you'll just tell us what happened, that would be great.
Yeah, no, it was. It's amazing. That was over 30 years ago, and people mention that play. Even people who weren't born, people who, I'll see, young current Duke students, or just in my travels, I'll meet somebody who's, in their early 20s, and they'll talk about that play, and I'm thinking, that was 30 plus years ago, but it really was an incredible moment. And to set the scene, we're in the regional finals in the old Spectrum in Philadelphia, and we've been undefeated all season. We're number one, reigning champions, and we're playing Kentucky, and it's a close game, back and forth. And Sean Woods from Kentucky hits a shot, a lucky shot, with like 2.1 seconds left. And prior to that moment where he hit that shot, I felt like we were determined. It was destiny for us to repeat, and we were so good and so dominant all season. And for the first time, I didn't believe. Like, I thought, okay, this run is over. And he hits this shot, it's 2.1 seconds left, and we call a timeout. And it really was an incredible lesson in leadership. And I give Coach, obviously I made a great pass and Christian made a tremendous shot, but Coach really was the foundation for our success in that moment. And so he did a few things during that timeout. First of all, as we were walking to the bench, and I'm thinking about, well, I might be at Beach Week next week instead of the Final Four, because it was spring break. And so I was like, if I can't go to the Final Four, it'd be fun to go to Myrtle Beach. I hear all these stories. Maybe I get a chance to experience it. But nevertheless, we're all walking to the bench. Our minds are elsewhere. And instead of him waiting for us to arrive, he met us on the court. And he told us, we're going to win. And so he just, he reassured us, and he established, a vision.
He got your attention.
He got our attention. And it's big. Like, you want to, he used to talk about, wanting to show a strong face, and as a leader, show confidence. Even if in that moment, he may not have believed, but it made us believe. And then as we were diagramming the play to run, instead of telling me, Grant, you're going to make this pass, he asked me if I could make the pass in front of the group. And so now we did drills every day, and one of those drills was a full length of the court baseball pass. And I prided myself on being the best passer. And I used to talk trash, during the drills. And so he knew I could make the pass. But instead of telling me, he asked me. And I said, I can do it. And there's something about taking ownership and saying it. I can do it. In this pressure-filled moment, in the Spectrum, the emotions of the Kentucky fans are screaming and thinking they're going off to the Final Four the next weekend. the Duke fans are dejected, the play, like we've given everything, and then to ask me that and to me say that, okay, that's one thing. And then he asked Christian Laettner if he could make the shot. And Christian never lacked confidence. And so Christian said, well, he said if Grant makes the pass, I'll make the shot. And so that should have been reassuring. Now I'm a little bit like, now the pressure's on me again. No, but I mean, that's what took place in the huddle. And so one, I think meeting us, reassuring us that we were gonna win, and then asking us if we can do our part. And so as I came to the bench, I'm thinking this season's over. And then when I left the bench after that timeout to head back on the court, I felt like we were gonna win. And so to change that belief in that short period of time, I give Coach K so much credit. And
he gave you some agency somehow
he did.
With those questions.
He empowered us.
Yes.
He did.
Yeah.
And that's what leadership is. And so I experienced it in one of the most incredible moments, pressure-filled moments, and thankfully we had him on our side and we made history. And the only bad part about that play, which is replayed every year during March Madness, is that I get to live with this bad haircut. And the only bad part is the flat top, it was I guess in 92.
I'm sorry, I don't know that many people noticed your haircut.
That's all I see.
Was there a story about the haircut?
Well, I tell young people that it pays to not be too trendy when you're young, because you may regret it later. And so when I see that play, everyone sees the pass and the shot, I'm just like, what was I doing with that haircut?
Was it like really close on the sides and a little bit more at the top?
A lot more at the top, yeah. It was
Okay.
It was kind of like Kid and Play. I don't know if you're familiar.
Whatever. Whatever. Well, I think you should just enjoy the moment and not worry about the haircut, because nobody else is noticing that.
Good
really.
advice. Good advice.
And you had the 2 back-to-back wins. You graduated. You've managed to stay connected to Duke in different ways. I know there were probably times when you were at the Detroit Pistons or later with the Orlando Magic when you didn't have time in your schedule to do very much at all, but you seem to have managed to get back to Duke a lot over the years, even when you were a young single guy and playing, and a young married man, a dad. You've kept Duke in your heart and have made time in your schedule. What makes that a priority for you?
Well, it's funny. I remember, I think it was during freshman orientation, and they talked about it. It wasn't a 4-year relationship, but it was a relationship for a lifetime. And I don't think I fully understood that at that time. And since I graduated, yes, I tried to come back in the off season, in the summers, and while I was playing in the NBA, and there were different causes that you'd support, and through the Alumni Association, through Duke Athletics, but really one of the great joys for me is upon retiring after almost 20 years in the NBA, to really reconnect with the school. And first of all, it helped that my mom was a trustee, was on the Board of Trustees, and so I through her, I was able to stay connected while I was still playing. And at times I had to remind her that, like, Mom, you didn't go to Duke, because she was so entrenched and so engaged and very much involved with all aspects of the university. But since I retired from playing in 2013, to reconnect and to just continue this incredible relationship, but also recognize just how much the school has changed and grown and ascended and it's quite remarkable. And the school, and it should be, in theory. A university, you should always improve in all aspects. But I'm just in awe of the school, of the people, of the faculty, the students. It's it feels like it was a sort of this regional school in the South that was becoming popular here in the U.S. in the late 80s. And now it has this like global reach. And that Duke brand, and someone who's sort of been a public ambassador through the years, people identify me with Duke. And so even before I retired, if I traveled all over the world, inevitably, somebody would say Duke, and they might say bad haircut.
No.
But no. And so to just see sort of in a very short period of time, where we are as a university, it leaves you in awe, and it's quite incredible. And so I've enjoyed reconnecting, and I've encouraged a lot of my peers that it's important. It's important to stay engaged, and it's home. There's some incredible experiences, and I think you go to a school like Duke. You go to a school like Duke to not only learn in this environment, but to leverage that and to stay connected to it. And so I've had tremendous joy and satisfaction in the last 12 years, reconnecting in a number of different ways, and it's been fun.
You had an advisor at Duke who also has played a big role here over the years. What was it like to have that long relationship with an advisor? And I'm talking about Sterling Wilder.
Yes. Sterling Wilder, wow. She's, she's incredible. She, wow, her relationship to this university as a student, as a daughter of a professor, and working in a number of different roles over the years. She deserves a statue. but
the part where she would call you up and say, Grant, I need you to do this. You couldn't say no, right?
Well, yeah. So Sterling was my academic advisor. I don't know if she did much advising. We would go, and I'd go to her office, and we'd hang out, we'd gossip. I'd go to her for social advice, and if there were issues, with significant others and things of that nature, she would have me sign a lot of autographs. I remember I'd go to her office, and I remember I moved off campus the summer after my sophomore year, and I don't think my mother trusted me with her credit card to go and purchase items for our off-campus apartment. So she sent Sterling a credit card, and Sterling and I went to the South Square Mall. We might have gone to one of the stores, and we went, we were shopping for appliances, and I remember, Sterling, and she's like, so she's telling me, that's not practical, don't do this, and she's like, like a big sister, and that pretty much was the extent of our relationship. And but now she's been a great friend, a great advisor, and just a great representative of the school, a great ambassador of the school. And the thing that when you have people like a Sterling Wilder, they love this place. They love Duke University, and I don't have a lot of connectivity to other universities, but I think she represents how a lot of people feel. They come here, they work here, they go to school here, and then they love this place. And so, but yeah, Sterling, a lot of great moments, a lot of great times with her, and just definitely a good friend.
I like your stories about the shopping.
And we stayed on budget.
That's right.
Janet Hill's budget.
Well, I worked on a committee with Janet once, and I remember it was right when everyone was starting to send email instead of call people up. And your mother was great at picking up the phone and getting right to the point when she wanted to get something accomplished. And I learned an awful lot from her. She was a trustee until 2021, and she passed away in 2022. Yeah. I know for you and your dad, it's been difficult, and I'm sure it's still difficult, and it is so for all of her friends at Duke. Even if she wasn't an alum, she was beyond great value to Duke, and considered an alum. She was given the University Medal posthumously, and I think in many ways, we're really grateful that you've taken a seat on the board. Can you talk about that experience and how you made that decision and what you've learned about Duke from a different perspective, not the end of the basketball court, throwing to the other end, but in that seat and thinking about the future, the next 100 years for the university?
Yeah, no, well, first of all, thank you for those kind words about my mother. And she may not have been super excited that I chose Duke and not Georgetown, but she instantly fell in love with this place. And I think it was like she and my dad were co-chairs of the parents committee. Right. And she was on the 𝐃𝐮𝐤𝐞 board for years. And of course, as you mentioned, as a trustee, I think she even painted her nails blue.
Oh, she did?
During
yes.
Duke Board of Trustees meetings. And so she outside of her family, I'm not sure that there was anything else that she loved more than, this place and this school and this community. And so, and then as for me, I mean, I was asked, I guess, as my mother was rolling off, if I would, I would consider. I still remember President Price calling me and asking me if I would consider that. And, I was just overwhelmed and surprisingly emotional. Like, I'm not an emotional person, but to be asked, yes, I mean, it was a no-brainer. And I think quickly you realize that it's quite the, I don't want to say enterprise, but there's just a lot that makes this place what it is. And I think to be a steward and to be, part of the leadership here, to have that responsibility, particularly as you mentioned around the Centennial. We were together last year when we had a joint meeting with the Duke Endowment, and we read the Indenture of Trust, and that was really, well, first of all, it was really long, but it was really powerful, just to understand sort of the vision of James B. Duke and to read that, and to just sort of see where we've gone in such a short period of time compared to our peers. And then now to sort of, all of us to be in this role where we start charting the course for the next 100 years. Like, it's just an awesome responsibility, something that there's tremendous pride. And, we've come a long way in such a short period of time, and we're here. We're here, we've established, we've proven ourselves. We have the respect in the higher education ecosystem, and we're just getting started. And so I love it. It's it's incredible work. It's incredible people on the board, and it's incredible responsibility.
The look ahead raises a question about athletics, college athletics, because there's so much changing in that landscape, and I think there's concern that the money aspect is in some ways threatening the traditional view of college athletes, the kind of opportunity that you had to be both a student and an athlete. And I'd just like to ask you to sort of help us understand what you think might happen next, how you see the responsibility of a university when it may be one step too far when we're trying to combine athletics and academics. How do you see it playing out? Or, and in some ways, your role with the USA national team gives you a perspective, an international perspective on athletics and the unique situation in the United States where we do have many of our professional athletes and our Olympic athletes coming out of universities in a way that is not replicated anywhere else in the world. So help us understand that from your perspective.
Do we have enough time?
Yes.
No.
It's too big a question. I apologize.
No. But you and I have talked briefly about this. It's very obviously very different than the early '90s. I remember I wanted to go to the Bryan Center, maybe my freshman year or sophomore year, and buy my jersey, and then get the G changed on the G to C for my dad, Calvin Hill, and get a Father's Day gift. And it cost me like $130 to buy my own jersey. And I remember I was kind of like, this is weird. I'm paying this kind of money for my jersey. Okay, fine. I was fortunate. I borrowed money from my mother, so I had the money. And so fast forward, this whole sort of push to allow athletes to participate. So much money had been generated over the last 30 years. There's $1 billion a year that's generated from the NCAA tournament, college football. I mean, coaches' contracts, things changed and evolved. And I think the one constant was, student athletes were not allowed to participate. And so, obviously, name, image, and likeness, that was sort of unveiled. But it's become this sort of wild, wild west. And in a lot of ways, it's become professional sports with no rules. And we have collectives, and we have, guys, athletes can leave, the transfer portal now. And so it's just a very different, landscape. And, and some of it I'm for, and some of it I think it's okay. I mean, I think it's good that student athletes should be able to, be compensated to some degree, but we don't have any guardrails. And that's the thing that to me is troubling. To your point, though, also about the Olympic movement, college athletics is a feeder system to the Olympic movement. And my fear is we're moving, in college athletics to this sort of professional model. And, where do different universities fit into that? Where do we fit into that? These are questions that we'll have to ask ourselves, I think, at some point. Like, who do we want to be? Who are we? How do you participate at the highest level on the playing field or in the on the hardwood or what have you, but not damage your integrity as, in your academic mission. And so that's the juggling act I think we all have to play. I think not just Duke, but every university. Sports, athletics is such a part of who we are. It's a part of our DNA. I remember in school reading about the ancient Greeks and how they would halt wars in the years of Olympics, and they understood the power of sport, and it inspires, it captivates, it entertains, it does so much. And so even then, and so we understand that, and we've been able to pursue excellence, both, in athletics, but most importantly in academics. But how do you do both in this world that's changing? And I don't necessarily have the answers on that, but I think as leaders, these are questions that we'll have to answer and times that we'll have to navigate. and there'll be some tough decisions, I think, down the road. I don't know what those decisions are, but it's just the uncertainty and what that looks like, not just for the revenue-producing sports, but for the non-revenue-producing sports. So we're in unprecedented times, and I don't have the answers for once. I don't have the answer, but I'm confident, though, that as things continue to evolve, that our leadership collectively will do what's in the best interest for Duke, and we'll do everything to maintain, our athletic and academic integrity through this whole process.
You sound optimistic in a good way.
I try to be optimistic, yes.
Well, I'm hopeful as well. I think the interest in excellence that crosses all these areas is something that people want to hang on to, but at the same time have some integrity in the way we go about it all. And I think we're fine right now, but who knows what comes the next day.
That's true.
And if you look ahead in those next 100 years that Duke will have after this 100 years, do you have some hopes, some dreams, some expectations that you'd be willing to share today?
Wow, that's a great question. As I mentioned, as a community, as a university, I think the first 100 years we've established ourselves as a premier university of higher education, and I think now that we're here, it takes a certain energy, it takes a certain spirit to do what we've done. I mean, think in the last 40, 50 years, sort of where Duke was and where Duke is now. There's something unique, something special, something ambitious that is associated with that. And as the advent of technology and AI, and then obviously climate change. I mean, there's so much that's happening in the world. How do we make a difference and tackle some of these challenges that are presenting themselves? I believe Duke will have its hands in so much, and finding solutions to a number of problems that potentially are out there. And we've already been ambitious. We've been bold in some of our goals, and I think we'll continue to be bold. That same boldness that has allowed us to ascend so quickly, I think will allow us to tackle some incredible, hurdles, problems, and make them incredible opportunities. And so I think we'll be part of the solution to some of the issues that potentially are there. And I believe that 100% that Duke will be a part of those solutions.
Well, thank you. I don't want you to miss the chance to remember something fun that happened in your connection with Duke. Are there some more tales that you can tell us about what you've enjoyed about being connected to this university over the years? Winning the basketball championship twice might have been up high on your list.
That was nice. That was fun. And what amazes me with that, really, it was 30 plus years ago, and people still remember. And I'm just kind of, amazed by that. And there's so much greatness just in Duke basketball that's occurred since then. But people still remember those moments. A funny story. I mean, it's my wife, Tamia, who you've met, and my wife is a recording artist and was signed to Quincy Jones right out of high school. Had 18, she's recording on Quincy Jones's album, and it's had a series of albums out. But she never went to college, and she would joke that when I would get together with my classmates and we, for dinner, or maybe we go on a trip or what have you, we all kind of tell the same stories. And we're telling them like we're, telling them for the first time. And we laugh at the same part. And she's like, you tell the story so much that I know the story. And I feel like I was there with you guys.
Oh,
and
that's nice.
And so she would joke about that. But she also talked about like, wow, to be able to have that kind of joy and to be able to share times that you had with, with your classmates. Like I wish I had experienced that. And then, as she's become more involved and engaged with Duke, I think she realizes it's not a college thing, it's a Duke thing. And not everyone has that same feeling and that same emotion that when I get with my buddies and we reminisce, or I meet strangers off the street who went to Duke. There's a feeling, there's a spirit, there's an emotion attached to Duke, and we know that, but she knows that, and she sees that, and so I don't know if that's funny, but
No,
I think it kind of speaks to sort of what makes this place, makes it Duke, makes it uniquely Duke, and so. But yeah, there's a lot of funny stories. I can't repeat some of them, and they're probably not worth repeating, but we do have, well, one of the best ones, I'll say this, was at our trustee retreat last year, and we had karaoke night. Were you, I don't know if you were.
No, keep going.
So yeah, we had our board retreat, and at the end, it was a wonderful retreat. It was a chance for families to come and connect. As a board replenishes, certain board members will onboard and join, and certain roll off. It's a chance for everyone to sort of get to know each other. Intentional connections,
right,
which I think are important. And at the end, the last night, we had a pretty formal dinner, and then we had a room with a karaoke machine. I'm thinking, that's interesting. Like, how is this gonna play out? And I'd say a good portion of the traveling party retired to their suites and went to sleep. But there were, a few that stayed and got involved with the karaoke. And it ended up being like a jam session. Like everybody was singing and dancing, and it was.
Did you take the mic?
I got,
Grant?
I can't sing, but I did. And everybody got out there and spoke, or sang, excuse me, and performed. And it was great that everyone could be themselves. They felt comfortable around each other to be silly, to be playful, to be fun. And you looked around the room, it was just an interesting, like, diverse, set of people having fun, enjoying each other's company, laughing at each other, having a great time. And it just, to me, it felt like this is who we are. We come together, we do some incredible things, we have fun.
There you go.
And at times we don't take ourselves too seriously.
That sounds good.
Especially when I was on the mic, yes.
I'm sure it was delightful.
Oh, so you weren't there?
Oh, I was in the old group that went to bed. I'll blame
You should have stayed.
I know.
It was
I
fun.
know.
It was
I
fun.
blame my husband for that. Well, thank you very much for your time and for all that you've done for Duke over the years and will do going forward. We appreciate you, and thank you for being here today.
Oh, well, thank you for your time, and thank you for doing a great interview.
So, who do you think is going to win the championship this year? Just saying.
The NCAA championship?
Yeah.
I think it's Duke every year. I think it's time. I think we have the talent, and we have the coaching, we have everything's, we have experience, we have a unique player in Cooper Flagg who I think you need a special player. And so, yeah, we go through the season, and, obviously we have to stay healthy. We got one game away from the Final Four last year.
That's right.
Somehow, some way. Shire and his staff did an incredible job. So But I always pick Duke.
It's true. I could never fill out a bracket without Duke in the top.
We're ready. It's our time.
All right.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.